Doing it. All righty. Good morning, everyone. Today we got a great episode. We have the executive director of 232 Help or 232-help.org. It's a great organization. Her name is Edie Aymond. Aymond. Okay. It's got a D on it, but hey, you guys know I'm from the woods of Turkey Creek where the Cajun influence kind of disappears a little bit. So forgive me. Hey, Mom. We're going to be talking about her about 232 Help, her history, and kind of what led up to her becoming executive director of 232 Help and where she's planning on taking it. And also their 59th anniversary is coming up. So hang out and enjoy the show. All right. So before we go too far, go ahead and mention my sponsor here is Chase Group Construction. If you heard me mention them before, they take the lead and become your one point of contact for the entire design build process. So if you're looking to build a business from the ground up or to renovate a space to make your business, they handle it all. They go from design to the build process. They handle it all. They're architect and construction company all in one. That's what that means. They have a diverse portfolio with popular restaurants, medical centers, large multi-unit shopping center developments, all in their portfolio. So check them out. Their website is chasegroupconstruction.com. Chase is a really great guy, super local guy, obviously. We try to work with only local people, and they've been supporting us for a while. So check them out, give them your business, and you'll be glad you did. All right, so we have Edie Couvillon Aymond in the studio, and we're going to be talking with her about 232 Help. So welcome back to the T Podcast.
Thank you.
Yeah, so it's been, what you said, 5 years?
I think so, a little over 5 years.
Yeah, 5 years since you came on last, and it was for your position at Maddie's Footprints.
Correct. Yeah, it was right after I started Maddie's.
So tell me a little bit about you to kind of get us caught up. I don't know if we did that 5 years ago, and if we did, I don't remember.
I don't remember either. I've done a few things since then.
Yeah. So are you with the last name like that? I think Couvillon was your main last name, correct. And now you have a married name, Aymond. Mm-hmm. All of it sounds very culturally relevant to the area. So are you originally from here?
I am. I grew up in Scott, went to Karen Crowe High School, LSU. Yeah. So I've been here all my life.
All right. So what was your career path growing up? I mean, obviously you didn't think as a 8th grader that you were going to be an executive director.
No.
Unless you did. I mean, that'd be crazy, but.
No, I actually stumbled in a nonprofit. It was not on purpose. There's a few times in my career I've looked back and like, how did that happen? Because they're strange. But no, I was, back in the day, I was taking karate with friends, and some of my fellow students kept saying, you need to run a marathon. I'm like, I'm not going to do that. That's ridiculous. I'm not going to do that. So they talked me into running a half marathon, and it was through team and training with the Leukemia and Lymphoma Society. So you fundraised for it, and then you got an entry into a race. And we ran in San Francisco, Alaska. We ran some really cool races doing that. But through the fundraising and being involved with them for a few years, somebody from the Leukemia and Lymphoma Society approached me to come into the local position here, which was campaign manager, and I did that for about 12 years. So I just kind of stumbled into it just because I started running some races.
Okay, so yeah. Obviously you like to run.
Yes.
Okay, yeah. So how long did you do track in school or anything like that?
I did track in middle school, and then once I got to Karen Crowe, I just wasn't good enough. I just really wasn't. So, I mean, shorter distances are no fun. It's easier for me. Longer distances are easier because you don't have to run as fast. You know, at least that's the way I look at it. So,
okay.
Yeah.
All right. And so all that led up to where you're at now. So going from Maddie's Footprints is more of a nonprofit that helps families in a loss, and now you're in a nonprofit that helps individuals and families essentially find their way.
Right.
So in a nutshell, before we go to our next sponsor and before we do that, so what is the high level of 232 Help, and what is it?
Yeah. 232 Help is, at its heart, it's a connector for people. So we have clients that'll call the line, and it can be anything from food insecurity, utility assistance. There's so many different things, rental assistance. They call us usually when they're in crisis, when they don't know where to go. They can call 232 Help or 211, and it gets our call center on Jefferson Street. So you get a real person from this area that knows the resources. We have a database of about 1,400 local resources, and we can help connect them to different agencies that can help them out of their tough spot.
Okay, all right. Well, we're definitely going to dive into that a little bit more in a little bit. Kind of going back to your experiences. So coming from all the nonprofit experience that you have, like, what are some of the most valuable lessons and experiences that you've gained along the way from your initial start in nonprofit to where you're at now?
You know, the biggest thing, working through nonprofits, the biggest thing that I see is that nonprofits get things done so much more efficiently than any government agency or anybody else could ever do. You need people that are passionate. You know, it's nice with 232 Help because we are an independent 211 call center. So 232 Help was the first 211 in Louisiana and the fourth one in the country. So we're independent, so we refer out to 8 other agencies, but we have freedom at the end of the day. If all the funding, all the other agencies are out of funding or they're unable to help, we have a small budget where we're actually able to fill those gaps. So just the nonprofits, it's better to support the nonprofits. I'm hoping we get these tax cuts they're talking about, because then people have the freedom to give more and to support local nonprofits, because that's where the real help happens. Yeah.
So that's one thing about nonprofits. That's the thing you depend a lot on charitable giving. Mm-hmm. And in times where the economic statuses of the world are tight, you usually see a tightening of charitable giving.
Absolutely.
Do you guys see that right now? Or does it, because you're relatively new in the position. Mm-hmm. From your experience and what you know about 232 Help at this point in your nonprofit experiences before this, is that consistent when the economic status of the world is tight? Do you see that it's less?
Absolutely. Yeah, when I was, especially earlier on when I was with the Couvillon Lymphoma Society, when Lafayette was so oil field based, when the oil field tanked, nonprofits suffered. And that was one thing the national organization didn't understand, just how local Lafayette's economy is. Now that our economy is more diversified, it's usually a little bit steadier. Yeah. And people in Acadiana are unique in that they're generous regardless of the economy. Usually, you know, we have good loyal supporters that'll support whether or not they can afford it. You know, we're very lucky here in Acadiana. It is not that way in other markets. It's really not.
So when you say it's not like that in other markets, like what data or what experiences do you have to be able to say that? Like, what is your experiences to be able to say that?
Yeah. Well, and just working through, we have with Leukemia and Lymphoma Society, our main office was in Metairie, and then Maddie's expanded into Baton Rouge. And, you know, one thing I've noticed in those different markets, it's more business and what can you do for me kind of thing, whereas here in Acadiana, people are giving from their heart. It's because they love the agency. Sure, if a business buys a sponsorship, they want the recognition, and that's absolutely justified, but they're doing it because they want to do it. You know, it's not just pure business like I see in bigger markets. Okay.
It's interesting because obviously your bigger markets, the population is, 2, 3, 4 times the size of Lafayette. Lafayette's a small, big city. Mm-hmm. And I guess that, in my opinion, that's where the giving with the heart comes in at, is because it has that small town, that feel. I mean, yeah, it's crazy. Nonprofit. So how many years have you been in nonprofit? Like,
it's been about 17 years.
17 years.
Yeah.
Okay.
Going on 18. Yep.
What has been the most challenging time in your experiences of nonprofit?
Well, you know the answer to this. I think you were on the board at COVID. COVID was terrible.
God.
It really was. I was with Maddie's at the time, and we were so fortunate because the Maddie's board was very forward thinking in the early years of the agency. So we had money saved to where we didn't have to stop paying out and helping families with their babies' burials. So we didn't have to cut staff. You know, we had to tighten our belts a bit, but we were able to still function. But yeah, COVID was a challenge because we didn't know how long it was going to last. You know, and that's when I had the spreadsheet and I was following the LDH dashboard and I was tracking it just to see praying for some kind of trend that it was going to get better. You know, so that for all nonprofits. And even with 232, what we saw was there were a lot of smaller, that's why the housing crisis right now in Acadiana is so bad. There were a lot of smaller shelters that closed during COVID that weren't able to reopen. They couldn't weather it. They couldn't make it through. So, you know, COVID really did a number on nonprofits for sure.
Yeah, and I mean, yeah, COVID did a number on a lot of things. Yeah. It did. It did a number on a lot of people's health. Some of it fatal, some of it chronically, and it is definitely something that we don't want to talk. It's like you don't want to talk about COVID because you want to move past it, but it still has a very real lingering effect on some things.
Oh, absolutely.
And yeah. I mean, there's still cases of COVID going around now. It's not as detrimental as it was in the beginning, but so kind of obviously in the same vein of nonprofit, I was in Leadership Lafayette last year, and obviously so for those that don't know, I'm on the board for Maddie's Footprints, so I've had a lot of working with Edie, and you guys for Maddie's came and spoke at Nonprofit Day for Leadership Lafayette. I don't think you've been through Leadership Lafayette, have you?
I have not.
I think it'd be good for you to do. But it was interesting. In Nonprofit Day, I don't know if you were there when this was said. It might have been, you know, early or later on there in the day, whenever before or after you got there. But Louisiana has one of the highest, I don't know if it's per capita, what the terminology is, but we have more nonprofits in Louisiana than many of the states in our size.
Yeah, I believe it. Well, I mean, and you look at Louisiana, especially Acadiana across the board, there's more entrepreneurs here. There's a lot of small, it's the same mentality of somebody sees a gap and they say, well, I can do something about that. So, and it's the same thing with nonprofit. There are tons, and, you know, that's the beauty with 232. So, you know, the evolution was nice. When I was contacted by a recruiter to look at this 232 job. And I remember him from when I was a kid because I grew up here, you know, because I remember Maria Placer talking about it way back in the day, you know. But when I started really looking into it, I was like, God, it's such a good resource because there are so many local nonprofits. Your average citizen's not even going to know what's available, you know, so it's good they can call one number and we can, just by asking them their zip code and kind of having a conversation with them, figuring out their needs, we can connect them to resources they didn't even know were available.
So I am going to see if Google will tell me how many nonprofits we have. Let's see.
Oh, that's a good question.
How many nonprofits does Louisiana have? I'm just curious. Let's see what it tells me. Oh, okay. So this is a big number. Louisiana has approximately 18,000 nonprofits that employ about 150,000 people. That is insane. And 92%, let's see, the majority of these organizations are small and community-based, serving local needs. 92% spend less than $1 million annually, and 88% spend less than $500,000 annually, which is an interesting data point. But still, that's a lot of nonprofits.
There's a lot of nonprofits, yeah.
And in the leadership class that day, everybody was kind of blown away with the amount of nonprofits that Louisiana has. And we've all kind of, I guess, hypothesized why we have so many nonprofits. One of the biggest reasons is Louisiana typically is one of the last in many of the rankings in education, in economic status, in jobs, like across the board. We're almost last in everything. And so that has a lot to do with the way people in the state, you know, live and need. And so a lot of nonprofits are created because there's such a need in so many different areas of people's lives because we are so last in everything.
Yeah, it's true.
I mean, does that hold water?
No, it absolutely makes sense because when you see a new, nonprofit pop up, it's related to a need. I mean, there's, we'll see like Rainbowy, when they popped up about they do the cuddle cots for babies when you've lost your baby, it gives you more time with them. Well, it's because they were affected by it personally, so they started this nonprofit so other families wouldn't have their same experience. So, yeah, it absolutely makes sense.
Yeah, so we're at about 15 minutes in. I want to get my sponsoring because I want to go ahead and start diving into 232 Help and everything because this kind of fits in that conversation. So real quick, our next sponsor is Music Academy of Acadiana. You've heard me talk about them before. They are founded by Tim Benson, a UL Music School graduate. They are a great music school. Let me tell you, nationally recognized. They teach all kinds of ages and styles of music, ages of people and styles of music. So you can be young, you can be old, you can be a fresh newborn, you can be old and crusty, you can learn music, doesn't matter. They teach violin, saxophone, piano, guitar, drums, flute, I mean, you name it. They even have audio production. They can help you improve your voice. Many different styles that you can choose from. They've sent students to college and major music competitions. They are a great school. Like I said, their goal is to make music lessons fun, educational, and to help foster the next generation of musicians and creative thinkers. Check them out at their website, musicacademyacadiana.com. They're also on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok. The founder is in a cover band called The Criers, and it's an early 2000s-esque emo cover band. So if you like early 2000s like rock, punk type stuff, they are a great band, and they really showcase the musical talent from Music Academy of Acadiana. So check them out. Again, the website is musicacademyacadiana.com. Okay, so on that note of 18,000 nonprofits, that is more nonprofits that I think, like you mentioned earlier, most people have no clue are available to access. And a lot of these nonprofits have money to either provide those people or services to provide to those people that help them get out of a situation. So with 232 Help, is that one of the biggest use cases for the nonprofit that is of 232 Help, like it's accessing those other nonprofits?
Exactly. Yeah, we're mostly a referral source, but we'll follow the client through. So if the client calls, and now some of them are fairly simple. If they need food assistance, we can direct them to the nearest pantry. We can tell them before they leave what documentation they'll need, what they need to bring with them so they don't show up and they're turned away. So some of those are it's a one and done. They get the information, they go about their day. But we have others that sometimes they'll call in and their need is bigger. So we'll attach them with a resource, but then we'll stay in touch with them. We'll make sure if we have to go and advocate with them for the resource, just to make sure they get the help that they need.
Yeah. So how many people are working at 232 Help to be able to accommodate all of the needs that you guys have coming through?
Yeah, believe it or not, we're a small staff. We're 10 total. We have 4 that are on the phones full time. But we get about 1,500 to 1,600 calls a month. So
okay.
we have a high call volume, but our staff is very well trained. They really do a great job managing the calls.
Do you have any particular off-the-cuff data that would suggest like what is the most primary reason for calling? What are the biggest needs?
It's evolved. Now prior to COVID, it was mainly your food banks, things like that. Since COVID, it's housing, and unfortunately, sometimes there are callers that they call and we have to tell them there's nothing there. We can't help you. We have one little mama right now we're working with who's actually living in her car. And we're really trying to get her some resources. And we have other agencies that we're working with because we partner with a lot of local agencies. But it's hard. It's a tough time for housing. So when the Catholic Charities was cut, their budget was cut so deeply for their shelter. Everybody felt that. It's not just that one thing. Every other agency feels that weight. When Himbala, I don't know if you remember the apartments that were going to get condemned. There were low-income apartments here in Lafayette. We were having emergency meetings because that would have been 100 families that would have been kicked out of their homes. So, and there's just nowhere to put 100 families. So luckily, they were able to do it apartment by apartment and remediate the damage. So they weren't all kicked out in the street, thank goodness. But I mean, we're walking a fine line right now in housing in Lafayette. So that's always a big call. Our second is just food, emergency food. You know, you and I are lucky. Even if we have to tighten our belts sometime, we know we're not going to have to miss a meal. You know, there's a lot of people in Acadiana that don't have that. They're not that fortunate. So we just worked. We went yesterday and volunteered at Second Harvest. That's one of our biggest referral partners now, are the little local food pantries.
Yeah. So we've had Second Harvest on a few times. Paul Selfo, great guy.
Yeah, he is.
I mean, they do a lot of great work, and that mobile food pantry, the mobile market, has been a really fascinating thing. And I think Advantial Credit Union helped sponsor and get that mobile food market through one of their swipe and support initiatives that they started just a few years ago. And when Paul talks about that mobile market, he really gets passionate about it because he sees people from all walks of life. And I asked him, like, is it just people that are, you know, down on their luck? Or he says, no, there's people that will pull up in a seemingly nice car, but,
Right.
you know, they're elderly or,
Right.
you know, maybe something happened and they just fallen on hard times and,
Right.
you know, they don't look like they're falling on hard times, but they're coming because
Right.
they need the help. And he said they've seen it all.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's true. Yeah, they do a lot of really good work, and same thing with St. Joseph's Diner. You know, we'll work with them, and you know, when you go and volunteer there, St. Joseph's Diner doesn't ask questions. If you want a hot meal, you can come in and eat. And you have people you can't judge. This guy might have just lost his job or lost his house. You never know, but he dresses well and he walks in. But you can't judge by the way people are dressed, by what their need is.
Wow. Okay. That was I've always thought about that. Like, if I wanted to go and, like, I don't know, run an experiment where a thought experiment for me, like, what would happen if I went?
Yeah.
And
No, you could walk in and get fed just like everybody else.
okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. I know. It's a pretty cool program. It's a big demand for sure.
Yeah. Actually, this morning I was scrolling through Facebook, and I'm part of several different local groups on there. And one of the groups, somebody had asked, how can they sign up or volunteer at one of the community soup kitchens, and because that's the typical name that people call it. And I was like, oh, they have, Catholic Charities of Acadiana with St. Joseph's Diner, like,
Right.
get with them. And so it's really neat to kind of have this conversation, because I literally just had that experience this morning of somebody looking to, volunteer and be a part of it. What are some other needs? So obviously housing is a big need right now, but like secondary and like, I don't know, third-ary, whatever the next alternative needs are, like what followed by housing, what are some?
Yeah. Legal assistance. We do a lot of referrals to the Bar Association for their legal aid. It could be trying to fight eviction, different problems they're having with landlords, things like that. We'll get calls of people trying to escape abuse. And it may be, a lot of times people will call 211 for information because they don't want lights and sirens showing up. They don't want to call 911. So we've had one of our call center staff had an elderly woman call who was being abused by her caregiver. And the caregiver was out of the house when she called. Well, in the process of the call, the caregiver returned back home. So our call center staff had to automatically go, like she was coming to fix her hot water heater, like just change the conversation. And, but at the same time, then we call elder services. We put it on their radar and let them know that there needs to be more wellness checks or something. We have had all of our call center staff, most all of them have had at least one suicide call. And it just depends. If it's imminent and they have a plan, then while they're on the phone with them, somebody else gets on the phone with 911, and we'll get their information and stay on the phone until 911 gets there for them. If it's just that they're having some thoughts but they don't have a plan, then we'll connect them to 988. That's a suicide hotline, but we'll do a warm connection, make sure they stay on the phone, get connected, and then we fall off the phone so they can have their privacy and have that conversation.
Wow.
So our little call center staff, they never know, when that phone rings, they never know what the call is going to be about. It can be something very simple, wanting to know how to fill out their FEMA forms, because we do a lot of disaster relief as well. Or it could be somebody at the end of their rope, who's in a real crisis.
That sounds difficult to deal with.
It's stressful. It is stressful. That's why our staff does well, but we're really, really monitor them to make sure they get the time they need off, that they get the support they need, mental health support.
I mean, to be someone on the phone, to get a call of that type of sensitivity, because if someone's calling on the verge of taking their life, you almost hold their life
right
in your hands on that call. That is insane.
Yeah, and our staff has done suicide training. Jacob Crouch came and did in-depth suicide training for them, and they did a lot of role-playing on how to handle those calls. But they do training in de-escalation, because when people do call, even if they're not suicidal, a lot of times they're angry. And they're irrational about something. So they get trained on how to de-escalate the call, how to calm the caller down, so you can actually have a productive phone call.
Yeah. So now my next question is, because thinking about like working with the public, because this is kind of like working with the public. Typically when you have positions that work with the public, you usually have a high turnover. Does 232 Help have a consistent employment status, or do you guys have high turnovers?
No, we actually, with our call center staff, especially all of our staff, we have a pretty solid staff. They've been there for a while. We really try to take care of our staff, as best we can. And they're just good people. They're all in it for the right reasons. They're all really passionate about what they do, and they're always looking for extra avenues to help. And it's almost one of the drawbacks, is because sometimes we have to pull them back and say, because if there's no services, you can't take them home with you. You have to, sometimes you have to just tell people, I'm sorry, there's nothing there. And it happens. And those are probably actually the hardest calls, because it's just disheartening to the staff, because they really want to help.
Do you know of any situations where people on the phone have gotten irate or, scream and just curse out the call center person? Yeah,
they do. And once in a while, hear my call center staff, like, not just kind of elevate their voice a little bit, and you can hear their voices firm, just saying, ma'am, trying to calm them down a little bit. And they do, at some point, if the caller is, because you never know if somebody's under the influence or who's calling you,
Yeah.
So at some point, if the caller cannot be calmed, then they just disengage the call.
Wow. I couldn't imagine having to get a call like that, just especially, or a suicide watch call. Like, ooh, gosh. Okay. So just kind of looking that through some of the other things, what are some of are there other nonprofits that you guys closely collaborate with? Obviously, Second Harvest was one. Locally, what are some that you guys as 232 Help connect with and make sure to work on a partnership? And a second question is, how do you forge a new relationship with a new profit, non-nonprofit?
Yeah, that's a good question. So obviously, Second Harvest, Catholic Charities, because we do a lot of referrals to their shelters. But also ARCH. It's Acadiana Regional Coalition for Housing and Homelessness.
Wow, that's a mouthful.
Elsa's going to be so proud that I remembered that. But they work really well. They're with HUD as far as for getting people into the system for low-income housing and trying to break the cycle of homelessness. It's one thing to find somebody a bed for a night, but then the next night they're still without a bed. So they really try to put them in the system to have a positive outcome long-term. So we work a lot with them. Faith House, we do a lot of referrals to Faith House as well. They're amazing. We have a lot of really good local partners. But now we're always looking. So just recently we've added Lamarck. So it's the multi-agency resource center, I think. It's through the juvenile justice system. They just opened up right there on the corner of Pinhook and Jefferson Street.
Okay.
In that old Veterans Administration building. And I love their mission, because it's young people who, they don't have to be offenders. If they have misdemeanors, they can enter their program. But even if we have a lot of grandparents raising grandkids right now. So if the child is getting kind of out of control and the grandparents don't know where to do, that they know they're headed down a bad path, they can go to that resource center, and they have specific resources and programs to help those kids to try to break that cycle and try to get them on a better path. So we just added them to the database. But any nonprofit that's listening, if you want to be added to the database, we would love that. Just the more resources, the better. It doesn't mean 5,000 people will be calling your phone. It means that if somebody happens to call us that happens to have that specific need, it's available we can tell them that you exist.
So great thing to mention there. How many resources do you guys have in your database?
I think we have a little over 1,400 right now.
Okay.
Yeah, and they're constantly curated. So we're always calling them, making sure they're up to date, making sure their opening hours are correct. Any kind of information, because a lot of times when somebody goes to, like I said, a food kitchen, they may need certain documentation. So we make sure all that information is accurate. So when the caller calls, they have the best information possible.
And are the majority of these organizations that you have for as resources, are they majority local?
Yes. Yeah, and we have some national on there, like the Epilepsy Foundation, things like that, where it's more informational. But yeah, it's mostly local. We cover 10 parishes. We cover the 8 Acadiana parishes and Avoyelles and Terrebonne. So when a caller calls, they call in, they give us their zip code, and then we'll enter that, and that narrows down the resources in their area. And then we start going through needs and seeing what's available for them.
Okay. Yeah, so speaking of, you this is kind of a tangent. I can already feel it. So the term Acadiana is interesting because you said 8 parishes of Acadiana.
It's controversial.
It is.
Those are the 8 recognized parishes of Acadiana.
Yeah. And then there's other documentation that will say that Acadiana starts from Calcasieu Parish and goes all the way, I think, to St. Charles Parish, which is bordering Orleans Parish.
Okay.
I'm like, okay, you know what? Look, maybe I can see it, maybe, but culturally,
right?
Like Calcasieu Parish has a different vibe.
Yeah.
If we're going on vibes alone, Calcasieu is like kind of East Texas vibe. St. Charles has more of an influence of the New Orleans area. And I think with the 8 parishes that you guys cover and that people typically know of as Acadiana, which is like Evangeline Parish, anything, think of it like anything that touches Lafayette Parish, pretty much. In that, if you can throw a stone away from Lafayette and it hits a parish, chances are that's what it's considered. I guess if you could throw a stone that far. But yeah, so like right there is what people think of as the Acadiana, Cajun country or whatever. But Avoyelles is almost, if not even with Rapides Parish.
Right.
But according to a lot of people, they have a very strong Cajun influence.
They do. Yeah, that's my dad's family. Couvillons, Grimions are all from Avoyelles Parish. But like my family, my ancestors settled, my Cajun ancestors settled in Lake Charles, because they were cattle farmers in Calcasieu. So it used to be Cajun. I think Texas is bleeding over a little bit.
Yeah. They have the Texas Boonant up in Lake Charles.
Oh, don't do that.
Yeah, look, side note, there was a business here. I won't say the business name because I don't know for sure if they're still in business. If they are, I don't want to expose them. But they had a product. And this particular product, I don't want to say the product type because you'll be like, oh, I know where this is at. But they had a product, and it was filled with boudin. And I'm like, oh, cool. Well, who's your boudin provider? Oh, somebody out of Texas. I'm like, okay, look, we do have the boudin capital right there in Scott. You might want to go get something from there. But yeah, oh gosh. Okay, so kind of ending that tangent. You guys have the 59th anniversary coming up for 232 Help. The 59, that's so 59 years.
Yep. Founded in 1965.
Wow.
Yeah.
So tell me about the founding story of 232 Help. Who founded it? I think I know who, but I want to make sure you give me the history. Who founded it and why?
Yeah. Bob and Jewel Lowe founded it. Interesting story. So amazing, really, really good people. Bob Lowe also founded LARC. So the Acadian Village LARC, because he had a handicapped child or a special needs child. But so Bob and Jewel Lowe co-founded 232 Help, but Jewel Lowe was the driving force behind the agency. Even before 232 Help was around, Jewel Lowe was on every board she could find. She's just incredibly passionate and charitable woman, just strong. There's even stories of her back in the day, because 232 Help has always had a donated dental program, which we still have for elderly or for disabled people below the poverty line. But there's stories from back in the day. If there was a child that needed some dental work done, and there wasn't a local provider. Miss Jewel, who came from means, she had some means. She would show up at this child's house in their neighborhood, pick them up, put them in her car, her Cadillac, drive them down to New Orleans, get the dental treatment, drive them back, and deliver them back to her house.
Wow.
She was just that passionate. So that made her start 232 because she wanted a way to connect all the nonprofits so that people weren't falling through the cracks. When there were services waiting to be spent and they were not spending their money helping these people because there was no connection between them.
Okay. So now I have a follow-up question to that. When a nonprofit has money that was donated to spend for a certain need, and that need is not met, what happens? Like, what does that nonprofit do? Obviously, you're from the nonprofit world for, 17 years, you said. Do you guys go and seek where to spend the money, or do you have a budget and you're like, oh, crap, like, this is where we're at? Like, do you reallocate the money? What does that look like?
Yeah, I would think, so like with Maddie's, with our budget, we didn't have there's so much need for that. So it was never really a problem. I think local nonprofits, their biggest challenge is just getting the word out, spreading the word. I mean, if they have money at the end of the year, it rolls over to the next year. You know, it doesn't go away, it stays. And like Maddie's in the beginning, you know, when Maddie's first started, there were some board members that even doubted that the need was going to be there. Because at the time, a lot of funeral homes would donate, like if a baby would pass away, they would donate their services. Well, I mean, funeral home's a business. People think of it like it's a service, but it's a business. So that couldn't continue, you know, rightfully so. So Maddie stepped in, and the first couple of years, they raised a bunch of money, and they were kind of waiting, like, is somebody going to take this money, you know? And obviously now, I mean, my goodness, they help probably 1,000 families a year. So people, the need is there. So it's just a matter of these nonprofits getting the word out and making enough noise.
Okay, so the money stays there, just rolls over until someone is able to use it. Right. And thankfully, you guys, as long as people know about you guys,
right.
Which I think a lot of people do, but like surprisingly enough, in our leadership class, whenever 232 Help came up and spoke, we were kind of blown away with the fact that this existed, this resource that's freely available to people in Lafayette and Acadiana area, and it had so many connections that I would say that the class was made up of pretty educated people that knew how to get through around life and, fill out forms and do all these things. They were actually surprised at certain things that you guys do that they needed help with at some point in their life that they didn't realize there was help there.
Right, absolutely. Well, I'll also encourage any business owner, if you have, for your staff, bring in the resource of 232 Help. Reach out to us. We can come and talk just to make sure your staff has access to everything that we offer and all the resources. It's funny because when the recruiter contacted me to come to 232, I was like, man, I haven't heard about them in years, So I started looking. I was like, God, they're still going. That's crazy. I started researching and just fell in love with the mission of the agency because it's got such a broad reach. I mean, who hasn't been at one time in your life down and out, or has a family member who's addicted? Because we get a lot of calls about addiction. Who hasn't been there before? We have resources for veterans. We have resources for, it's called kinship. So it's family members, biological family members who are raising kids that are not their own. So there's a whole special set of resources for them as well. It touches everybody's life. It's not just, our homeless neighbors that happens to it. It touches everybody.
So it touches everybody. How can somebody that's everybody or everybody that's somebody that needs services or they feel like they could benefit from a service, how can they find out more? I mean, obviously calling 211-232 Help, but what sources do you have that someone can just browse at their convenience that they can find out what services that you guys are connected to?
Yeah. Actually, we're working on a new website. Somebody in the room might be building it for us. But no, even on our current website, there is access to our resource database. It can be overwhelming. That's why if you go on there and you're looking for something specific and you're struggling, just call the number. It's a free number. It's 24/7. We're always there. And that way somebody can kind of guide you through it and point things out for you.
Okay. Yeah. I love it. There was, when, like I said, I keep going back to Leadership Lafayette and that nonprofit day of hearing about it and just realizing that so many people didn't realize this existed, or they knew of it but didn't realize the extent of what this nonprofit does was pretty fascinating. What is, the next 60 years, obviously that's a lot of years to think about because most of us will not be here
Hopefully
in 60 years.
I'm retired by then.
yeah, right. Hopefully. Oh, shoot. I mean, if modern medicine advances at the speed that it's going, I could potentially see, God, was 60, I'd be, God, would that be 90? Lord. And some people would be well older than that. Yeah. So what does the future look like? I guess, all jokes aside, what does the future look like for 232 Help and advancing that need for services that people may not know about?
Right. Yeah, this next year, 2025 is going to be really just focused on us being the best call center we can, adding as many more resources to the database that we can, getting as tight and as clean, making sure we're giving out the best information and as much information as possible. But we're also rebuilding. So we have a donated dental program I told you about. So I'm going to be kind of building that up, getting that a little bit bigger, because that's such a need. Even people, you think about people on Medicaid, it doesn't cover dental work at all unless they see it's the cause of a secondary problem. So if you go to the hospital with a heart trouble, and they can trace it back to your dental work because it's all connected, then they'll pay for the dental work, but they won't pay for the preventive maintenance. So a lot of people in Acadiana, a lot of elderly people are falling through the cracks, and it's affecting their overall health. So we're really, we have a lot of dentists that are amazing in Acadiana, and they donate their time. So they'll put a list of what services they'll donate, and then when we find a client, we'll match them up with a dentist that'll work best with them. And if there's costs, like if there's anesthesia costs or anything on top of that, then we try to cover those costs so that patient can get everything they need.
Okay.
So, yeah.
So that was one of my next questions, because you were talking about nonprofits and having money to spend and all that. Obviously, you guys are a nonprofit, and you guys get money and charity donations. It's interesting to hear that you guys actually put money towards, certain things such as dental work.
Sure.
Are there other things that you have money that are allocated to? So like, let's say someone is in need of, I don't know, maybe not medical, but like they can't pay a certain bill for whatever reason. Are there things like that? What is other payouts that you guys do?
Yeah, well, in most cases, we'll only pay out if our community partners are either out of money or if there's just no other resource. Right. But like we had one the other day. It was an elderly gentleman who something in his breaker box, power box at his house shorted. And so he was out of, and this is when it was hot, so he didn't have any air conditioning. So we went to a bunch of agencies, couldn't find anybody else. It was like $500, but for the equipment, and then we found an electrician who would actually do the work for free if we covered the equipment. So by doing that little bit of a donation, this elderly gentleman now has, air conditioning again. So it's little things like that where only if we know we've exhausted every other resource and there's nothing else, we have a small budget that we can help with. Okay.
And I'm noticing a consistent theme around elderly because, typically that's a part of the population that, typically suffers from, being able to do things for themselves and this and that. What about younger families that are going through trouble? Obviously, there's certain things that we talked about, like as far as housing and food, but let's say it's some similar to that where they have an expense on their house that they can't afford, and it's in the middle of the summer. Let's say it's in the middle of the winter where you need heat because you can only bundle up so much.
Right, and it would have to be qualified. Most of the people we work with are the underserved, so it's people with very, very low income. Yeah. So they would just have to be qualified. We'd have to make sure. Because there's so much need out there. If we didn't set some kind of parameters, we'd be taken advantage of. Yeah. So, we try to help where we can, and you'd be surprised how many resources there are available. that's the value of 232 is that I wouldn't know, when I first started with Maddie specifically, but even now, I'm meeting with all the nonprofits just to get a full list of everything they offer, and I'm still surprised. And I've been in nonprofit for 17 years.
Yeah.
So there's so much out there.
That's crazy. And you said 1,400 resources at the moment.
Correct.
Behind 232 Help.
Yeah, correct. Yeah.
Like, how does your staff maintain knowledge of all those resources?
We have a really good database. It's been built up since 1965. So, and like I said, we have people that every day that's their job is to call the resources and make sure everything's still current. So, so it's and there's always, if we have a newer staff member, there's always somebody with more experience there that they can bounce ideas off of. But we'll do that. We'll tell clients sometimes, let us research and we'll call you back, and then we'll get back to them with the resources that we found.
Okay, so your 59th anniversary is coming up. You said December 3rd or 4th?
4th.
Okay.
Yep.
What does that look like, and what are you guys celebrating on that anniversary? Like, what is there a milestone? Obviously, 59th anniversary. What is that going to look like?
Yeah, so it's December 4th at our office on Jefferson Street. It's 1005 Jefferson, almost across from Keller's. It's 59th anniversary, but it's also would have been Miss Jewel P. Lowe, our founder's 100th birthday.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so we're going to have a big celebration for that. It's going to be an open house. That way people can come in, meet our call center staff, we do amazing things with not a whole lot, so let people see what it looks like for a nonprofit, but come in and meet the staff, hear their stories. We can share information. We're always very protective of our clients' anonymity, but we can share the general stories about what happened. We're going to have champagne and cake, and it's going to be a nice we have a ribbon cutting. One Acadiana's coming out at 4:00. We'll do a ribbon cutting.
Okay. So is the community that would like to show up and all that and be a part of it, are they allowed to show up, or what does that look like?
Absolutely, yeah. It's open to the public. It's an opportunity for everybody to get in there and kind of meet the people and see what we do. Like I said, the ribbon cutting itself is at 4:00. I think we're going to close Jefferson for about 20 minutes to have the ribbon cutting out front.
Yeah, because it's a busy part of Jefferson.
It is, yeah. So we're going to close it for a few minutes for that and for the photo op, and then afterwards it's an open house in the building, and we're going to have champagne and hors d'oeuvres and
champagne, hors d'oeuvres, and cake. All right. If any other reason, that's a good one.
I was going to say, I know you have a sweet tooth. Right?
God, you know I do. Look, all kidding aside, man, for the board meetings at Maddie's Footprints, Edie would make sure to bring cookies. And guess who brought those cookies home? Yeah. I did. And I brought some champagne home, too, and stuff like that, because nobody else was taking it. So I'm like, I'm going to take the cookies, okay? God, my sweet tooth. I try my best to not indulge too much, but it's really hard.
Right.
And I know my mom and dad, they're battling their health situation with, sweets and all that good stuff. So they're on the carnivore diet or whatever have you. So it's like they're trying their best to not indulge because, it could, as you get older, it can lead to other serious issues. And I'm over here at, 38 years old. I'm like, should I start cutting back? Like, oof.
Yeah.
And I have. I love sweet tea so much. Obviously, hence the name of the podcast is the Tea Podcast. I like tea, but specifically sweet tea. I used to be able to drink like Kool-Aid sweet tea, and I can't do that anymore. Because it's not good. You can pack on pounds, but I noticed over the past probably 5 to 7 years, I can't remember exactly how long, I've been transitioning from straight sweet tea to milder, less sweet, but I still put sugar in it because I have to have a little bit. But for a gallon, I put like maybe 2/3 cup. So it's a little bit less, and I've been gradually getting less and less, but I still want a little bit of sweet. Yeah. So like even at a restaurant, I get half and half, and I used to think it was weird because my dad would ask for half and half. I'm like, get the full sweet. And now I know why. But with cakes and stuff like that, I struggle a little bit in that department. Yep. Yeah.
I understand.
Yeah. I should probably do a little bit more working out to accommodate for that problem, but that is my cross to bear, so I'll cross that bridge. But is there anything that we did not cover that you want to make sure to talk about before we head on out?
I don't think so. Just for people to keep the number in mind if you come across somebody that has any kind of crisis. And it can be anything small to something big, like their house catches fire and they need resources. Or
Oh, that's a big one.
yeah, or hurricane time. You know, we get activated when the governor declares an emergency. We get activated. So 211, we have to double or triple our staff in overnight. So and we did that when one storm where we dodged a bullet this year, but we were ready. We activated our staff.
Talking about Helena?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we activated our staff. We were ready for it. And, you know, we're technically we're FCC number 211, so we're a public service, but we don't get paid for a public service. So we have to raise the money so that we can afford to do this, to continue, you know. So, you know, anytime if people have FEMA questions, if you know people that are very low income that need tax preparation, we're getting ready to start doing that again this year. We schedule the appointments and get them in there with free tax preparers. I mean, there's more resources than you would think. So if somebody's in a bind and you just don't know where else to look, just give us a call and we can point you in the right direction.
Awesome. Well, there you go. So 211 on your phone, literally just dial 211. It's almost like 911, but for information.
Right, exactly.
You need emergency information, call 211. And then also their website, currently it is being worked on, but they do have a website that's up, so you can find some information and view their resources there at 232-help.org. But in about a week or two, you should see a brand new website designed by yours truly. And I'm going to make sure it operates as smoothly as possible and has all the information at a quick glance. That's my goal for it. But with that, Edie, I appreciate you coming on. It's always good to have you on. It's a joy to talk with you, and I hope that you make 232 Help as great of an organization as it already is, but even better.
That's my job.
That's your job. That's why you're there.
That's it.
All right. Well, Edie, I hope you have a great weekend. It is next week. Is it next week's Turkey Week? Is it Thanksgiving?
Already? It might be.
I think so.
It's a blur. It's like November.
I know.
It's
like
crazy.
Yesterday it felt like Friday, and today is actually Friday. Yes, next week is the week of Thanksgiving. Yeah. That is crazy to think about. Oh my God. Okay. Well, enjoy your weekend and enjoy your Thanksgiving holiday as well.
You too.
You and I will be staying in touch over the next few days. So I look forward to getting all that worked out for you guys. And if you're listening, I hope you enjoyed the episode, and I hope you have a great weekend, and happy Thanksgiving as well. Edie, happy Thanksgiving.
Thank you. You too, Ben.
All right, y'all have a good one. Enjoy the rest of your day. I was going to say week. The week is over. Y'all go have a good day, and we'll see you on the next.